My husband sponsored a poor student. While I was out, she secretly wore my husband's pajamas and posted a picture on Weibo, captioned, "My brother's pajamas are so comfortable." She also taunted me in various ways, but I wasn't afraid. After a few rounds, I completely defeated her, leaving her utterly ruined. Late at night, I woke up to drink some water and then found myself unable to fall asleep. My husband was sleeping soundly, and I didn't want to disturb him, so I opened Weibo to pass the time. The more I scrolled, the sleepier I became. Just as I was about to go back to sleep, I unexpectedly came across a Weibo post that instantly woke me up. In the picture, a girl was wearing a black men's pajama top, half exposing her collarbone, with a dreamy look in her eyes. She looked very alluring. That girl was none other than the poor student my husband was sponsoring. Although I hadn't had the chance to meet her, my husband had shown me her video before. The background in the picture was clearly our bedroom, and the pajamas she was wearing, I recognized them at once because I had personally bought them for my husband. Then I looked at the caption, "My brother's pajamas are so comfortable." I felt a wave of disgust. There were a few comments under her Weibo post. I clicked on them and found the content quite interesting. Someone commented, "What? Have you fulfilled your wish?" She replied, "Not yet, but soon." Although this exchange didn't name anyone, I could tell that her wish had something to do with my husband. At this point, I was wide awake. Looking at my husband sleeping next to me, I slapped his face hard. He woke up, groggy, and asked what was wrong. "Look at this!" I threw my phone at his face. My husband rubbed his eyes and looked at the phone, then showed a shocked expression. "What the hell is this? Why is Song Ya wearing my pajamas and taking these kinds of photos?" I crossed my arms and looked at him with disdain. "You tell me. How should I know?" He scratched his head, trying to recall. "Oh, right. I remember now. Honey, do you remember last month when she said she had nowhere to go? Didn't you kindly let her stay at our place for a night? It must have been taken then." I suddenly remembered. That day, my husband and I went out together and didn't come back home that night. She called, saying she had nowhere to stay. Seeing her as a poor student who was lonely and helpless, I kindly allowed her to stay at our house for one night. Little did I know I was letting a wolf into the house. The thought of her wearing my husband's pajamas and lying in our bed made me feel sick. After this incident, my husband developed a strong aversion to Song Ya. He took out his phone and called her. "Song Ya, what do you think you're doing? I'm sponsoring your education because your dad once helped me. It doesn't mean I have any feelings for you. Don't go after things that don't belong to you. If you keep doing such inappropriate things, don't blame me for being harsh." When my husband was a child, he was kidnapped by human traffickers, and it was Song Ya's father who saved him. Over the years, my husband had helped Song Ya's family a lot. The phone was on speaker, and I could hear Song Ya's pitiful explanation. "I'm sorry, brother. It's my fault. Is it because your girlfriend saw it and got upset? I'll delete it right away. I don't want to cause you any trouble." From just a few sentences, I concluded that Song Ya was a manipulative green tea girl and one with a certain level of skill. My husband impatiently corrected her. "She's not my girlfriend. She's my wife. We're already married. Your behavior doesn't just upset her, it upsets me. She's my treasure, and I would never allow her to be hurt. What gives you the right to upset her? Delete it within a minute or bear the consequences." She quickly apologized and, sure enough, deleted the photo within a minute. I looked at my husband with admiration. This man was indeed the one I chose, always staying clear-headed in these situations. The next day, Song Ya's parents called to apologize and invited us to dinner. At first, I thought her parents were reasonable, but I was in for a surprise. Before the dinner, I dressed up meticulously, wearing a Chanel suit, carrying a Hermes bag, and putting on exquisite makeup. When my husband saw me, he kissed me several times before I pushed him away. I dressed like this to make Song Ya feel inferior and withdraw on her own. What if my makeup gets smudged? All my effort would be wasted. My husband drove us to the restaurant where Song-ya's family had already arrived. As soon as we entered, I spotted Song-ya. To be fair, she wasn't unattractive, but she didn't know how to dress, so she looked a bit plain. When she saw me, her first reaction was to size me up, especially my Hermes bag and the 4-leaf clover necklace around my neck. She stared at them as if trying to burn them with her gaze. After a few seconds, she looked away and smiled at my husband. "Brother, you're here." She completely ignored me, clearly on purpose. Of course, my husband noticed and immediately introduced me to them. "This is my wife, Shen Chen." She was stunned for a moment, then smiled and greeted me. "Hello, Sister Shen. It's nice to meet you." My husband impatiently corrected her. "She's my wife. You should call her sister-in-law." She looked awkward for a moment, then forced a stiff smile. I thought calling her sister would be more intimate. "Don't call her sister. My wife is the youngest in her family and isn't used to being called that." The atmosphere grew tense, and Song-ya laughed awkwardly, unsure of how to respond. Her parents quickly stepped in to smooth things over. "You silly girl, calling her sister-in-law is more appropriate. Don't say things that don't make sense." They invited my husband and me to sit down. As we took our seats, Song-ya immediately moved to sit next to my husband, even offering him a shrimp. "Brother, try this dish. It's delicious. Remember when you stayed at my house and my dad made shrimp for you? You loved it. You even said you wanted to marry me when you grew up. Do you still remember?" She said this while giving me a provocative look. I knew she was trying to use this childhood incident to provoke me, as if I was invisible. I was about to fight back when my husband spoke. He poured out the dish in front of him and calmly said, "If I remember correctly, I never said such a thing. And even if I did, mentioning it in front of my wife. What's your motive?" The way he handled it was perfect, leaving no room for me to retaliate. Song-ya swallowed her resentment and smiled. "Oh, I was just joking with you." Then she turned her gaze to me. "By the way, a few days ago, I ran into someone I knew, and it turns out he was sister-in-law's ex-boyfriend. He told me that they almost got married. Isn't that such a pity?" She looked at me smugly, but I didn't bother responding. I just focused on my husband, who had always been jealous of my past relationships. He had finally moved on, only for Song-ya to bring it up again. I wondered how she would face his reaction. Bang! My husband slammed his chopsticks on the table and glared at her. "So what? You think it's a pity? Why don't you marry him and fulfill your regret? Then you won't feel it's a pity anymore." I watched Song-ya with a sense of detachment, as if this had nothing to do with me. For a moment, Song-ya was flustered, her face turning pale. She bit her lip and tearfully explained, "No, I didn't mean it that way. I was just casually mentioning it." My husband sneered. "Who brings up someone's ex-boyfriend like that? Fortunately, I trust my wife unconditionally. If it were someone else, you would have caused an argument. What's your agenda? Do you have a crush on Cheng-ja?" Song-ya frantically shook her head. "No, I don't like him." My husband looked her up and down. "Well, at least you have some self-awareness. After all, Cheng-ja has seen what my wife is like. How could he possibly be interested in you?" My husband's disdainful expression left Song-ya speechless. I tried not to laugh, but felt it would be too mean. Still, I didn't feel bad for her. She brought this upon herself by provoking me and mentioning Cheng-jae. She deserved everything coming her way. Her parents had been watching her get scolded and looked a bit uncomfortable, unsure how to step in. When I saw my husband had vented enough, I gently patted his hand and said sweetly, "All right, honey, don't be mad." My husband looked at me apologetically. "Sorry, I didn't know it would upset you. If you're uncomfortable, let's leave. I'll take you to eat somewhere else." When Song-ya's parents heard that we were about to leave, they immediately panicked. Song-ya's father got up, walked over to her, and slapped her hard across the face. "You little brat! If you can't talk properly, then don't talk at all. You've upset your brother and sister-in-law. I'll teach you a lesson." With that, he slapped her twice more, turning her fair face bright red. I was shocked. My husband calmly held me in his arms, watching the scene unfold like a spectator, not lifting a finger to stop it. After being hit, Song-ya held her face, her tears falling silently, not daring to cry out loud. Her father didn't seem to think he had gone too far. He just kept trying to please my husband. "Xiaolong, your sister didn't know better and made you mad. I've already punished her, so don't take it to heart." But my husband didn't give him any face. He just casually placed some food in my bowl and said indifferently, "Uncle Song, there's no need to apologize to me. Song-ya didn't offend me, she offended my wife. Also, please remember, my wife is my treasure. Anyone who upsets her upsets me. My wife has a good temper and doesn't like to hold grudges, but I'm not like that. If Song-ya sincerely apologizes to my wife and promises not to make the same mistake, I might consider letting it go. Otherwise..." My husband smiled slightly, but it was a threatening smile. Song-ya's family was intimidated and nodded repeatedly. Under pressure, Song-ya tearfully apologized to me. "I'm sorry, sister-in-law. I'm young and didn't know any better. Please don't hold it against me." I smiled and replied, "It's okay, little sister. Just remember not to wear my husband's clothes at my house again. After all, my husband is a bit of a clean freak, and that pajama set was quite expensive. He even said it was so dirty he had to burn it." Song-ya's face turned pale as she swayed on her feet, looking like she might faint. Satisfied, my husband said, "All right, my wife is kind enough to let this go. Don't make her regret it." Song-ya stopped crying and slowly raised her eyes, her gaze full of tears, looking pitiful. "Okay, brother, I won't do it again." Only then did my husband's expression soften, and we continued our meal with fake smiles. Song-ya kept nibbling at her food while sobbing quietly, but my husband didn't even glance at her. As we neared the end of the meal, Song-ya's father tentatively asked, "Xiaolong, we've been here in the city for a while now, but staying in a hotel isn't very convenient. Why don't we buy a house here? What do you think?" Song-ya's mother chimed in. "Yes, Xiaolong, a hotel can't compare to a home." I was puzzled at first, wondering why they were discussing buying a house with my husband. Then I realized they were asking him to buy the house for them. I felt a surge of anger. Over the years, my husband had spent a lot of money on their family, paying for Song-ya's tuition, buying them a house in their hometown, and even covering her father's gambling debts. But now they wanted a house in Beijing too? To my surprise, my husband chuckled and agreed, "Sure, Uncle Song. I'll look into some good properties and buy you a place." "Thank you, Xiaolong. You're such a good kid." Song-ya's family immediately expressed their gratitude. Song-ya even shot me a triumphant look. I turned to my husband, confused. Was he really planning to buy them a house? Noticing my gaze, my husband gave me a reassuring look and a mischievous smile. I knew that smile all too well. It meant he was planning something. Suddenly, I felt a bit sorry for Song-ya's family. They were about to be outsmarted by my husband. After the meal, the waiter brought the bill. I noticed Song-ya's father subtly signaling the waiter to hand the bill to my husband. I was speechless. They invited us to dinner, yet they didn't even want to pay for it. Little did they know this restaurant belonged to my father. I gave the waiter a look, and he stood firmly in front of Song-ya's father, not moving. Just as Song-ya's father was about to ask my husband to pay, I interrupted, "Honey, I'm feeling a bit tired. Let's go home." My husband smiled indulgently at me. "Tired? My little troublemaker. I'll carry you home." With everyone watching, my husband scooped me into his arms. As we turned to leave, I saw the envy and frustration on Song-ya's face, as if I had taken something that rightfully belonged to her. But he was my husband, and she could only watch helplessly. In the car, I told my husband, "Did you see Song-ya's expression? It was like I stole billions from her. She was practically ready to devour me with her eyes. My husband kissed me on the cheek, ruffled my hair, and held me close. She's nothing. Let her be smug for now. I'll deal with them all at once later. I was puzzled. Honey, what do you mean? Aren't Song-ya's parents your saviors? Didn't you agree to buy them a house? Why are you talking about settling scores? My husband explained patiently. To be honest, I've always suspected that Song-ya's father was involved in my kidnapping. Otherwise, I don't understand how he could have rescued me so easily. But I don't have any evidence, and I don't want to wrongfully accuse my savior, so I've never pursued it. But yesterday, I had my assistant look into it again and found out that Song-ya's father has ties to the human traffickers. I haven't gathered enough evidence yet, so I promised to buy the house to stall them. Suddenly, everything made sense. Got it. Don't worry, honey. I'll play along. He held my hand tenderly. There's no need for you to play along. If you're ever wronged, just tell me. I'd rather get rid of them all. You have no idea how much I wanted to sew her mouth shut when she mentioned Changzhe today. I quickly reassured him. Don't alert them just yet. If they sense something's wrong, it'll be harder to catch them. Let's pretend for now and wait until we have evidence. Don't worry about Changzhe. You're the only one in my heart. My husband smiled contentedly. Nestled in his arms, I felt a deep sense of security. The next day at work, I heard we had a new intern. My colleagues said she was a relative of the manager, assigned to our department for an internship. I was confused. My father hated nepotism. How could the manager dare pull this under his nose? Yes, I work at my father's company. To prepare me for taking over one day, he insisted I start from the bottom, so no one knows my true identity. This allows me to hear all the office gossip without anyone holding back. As I pondered this, the new intern walked in. To my surprise, it was Song-ya. How could she be related to the manager? Song-ya walked over with a smug expression, the team leader following her like a lackey. The colleague next to me whispered, "She's probably the boss's daughter. Look how the team leader is fawning over her. Better not cross her." Hearing this, Song-ya glanced around before focusing on me, her expression turning to shock. I smiled and greeted her. "Hello, Song-ya." Song-ya stammered, "Why are you working here?" I shrugged. "Just because I like the company's atmosphere." Song-ya was briefly stunned, but then smiled confidently. "What a coincidence, Sister Shen." Without my husband around, she reverted to calling me Sister Shen. She then provocatively added, "This is a workplace. You won't get mad if I call you Sister Shen here, right?" I shook my head. Why would I be? The team leader, seeing that we knew each other, assigned me to mentor her. "Xiao Shen, you'll be in charge of training Song-ya. Make sure you do a good job. If anything goes wrong, I'll hold you accountable." I found it amusing. I couldn't wait to see how she would fare in my company while threatening me. I showed Song-ya to her desk and began explaining her work. I was thorough, but she wasn't responding. When I looked up, I saw her staring at me with pity. "Sister Shen, you must have it tough. Does your husband not give you much spending money? How else could he be so wealthy, yet you still have to work hard to earn money?" I suppressed my anger. "I just enjoy working." She didn't believe me. "Oh, don't be so stubborn, Sister Shen. I know you must have your reasons. It makes sense, though. Brother has spent a lot on my education and my family's new house. Maybe he doesn't see you as family yet. It's a bit sad, really." Her eyes looked moist as if she genuinely pitied me. She was so kind-hearted that even the Buddha in a temple might step aside for her. I replied impatiently, "My relationship with my husband is none of your concern. You're new here, so focus on your job. Otherwise, you might end up jobless and crying in the streets." She waved it off. "I won't hit your sore spot anymore. But do you really think I'm just a lowly intern? I'm only here for a short while before I become your boss." Her face was full of arrogance as she looked down on me like I was something dirty. It was laughable. She could fool others, but not me. The idea of her being my boss was absurd. Holding back my disgust, I thought of my husband's plan and suppressed my anger. I see. Well, I wish you success. After work, my husband picked me up in his Porsche. As soon as I got in the car, he leaned over. My darling, you must be tired. Want me to massage your legs? I put my legs on his lap and commanded, "Of course, I'm exhausted. Don't stop until I'm satisfied." After a while, my fatigue eased. As I sat up, I noticed Song Ya standing in front of the car, her eyes red. Someone who didn't know better might think I was the third party and she was the wife. I was slightly horrified. How long had she been standing there? Did she see everything I just did with my husband? The thought of her watching us made me feel sick. Before I could react, my husband honked the horn several times and lowered the window. Are you standing in front of someone's car to scam them, or are you just stupid? Do you have a problem? She looked pitiful. I just happened to be passing by. If you're passing by, then hurry up and leave. Are you spying on us? Are you some kind of pervert? I fanned the flames. Honey, this is so awkward. I'll have to punish you by banning public displays of affection. My husband's face darkened as he yelled, "Get lost and don't let me see you again." She glared at me, tears brimming, before running away. I had to wonder how she always managed to cry so much. Maybe it was a skill she had honed over the years as a green tea girl. I asked my husband, "Don't you feel sorry for her seeing her cry like that?" My husband replied matter-of-factly, "Feel sorry? Don't think all men are dumb. I know what a green tea girl is. She's doing this to gain my sympathy and achieve her goal, but I'm going to do the opposite and make her miserable." I laughed, impressed by my husband's sharp instincts. I didn't think much more about the incident, but the next day at work, I discovered that rumors about me were spreading like wildfire. As soon as I arrived, I noticed my colleagues whispering behind my back. "She's the one who got into that luxury car yesterday. Who knew she was that kind of person? So shameless." I was puzzled. Even if they saw me getting into my husband's car, why would they call me shameless? My relationship with my husband is legitimate. I found my friend, Xiao Nan, and asked her what was going on. She whispered, "You haven't heard? People are saying you stole Song Ya's boyfriend, and she caught you red-handed. She was crying in front of your car." I almost burst out laughing. Song Ya really twisted the truth. Since when did a legal marriage become an affair? She was the one trying to interfere in our relationship, but my husband didn't even spare her a glance. I didn't bother clarifying these petty rumors. After all, I wouldn't be a low-level employee forever. Once I took over the company, these rumors would naturally disappear. Why waste time explaining? I went to the break room to get some water. As I approached, I heard Song Ya's pitiful voice. "I don't know why Shen Chen is so mean. She just had to steal my boyfriend." Someone chimed in. "Why else? For his money, of course. She always pretends to be a wealthy woman, but seeing you made me realize that real rich girls are so low-key." I recognized the voice. It was Li Ying. She was always trying to compete with me, whether it was by buying knockoff versions of the same luxury brands I owned or by spreading rumors about me. I wasn't surprised she was bad-mouthing me now. I stepped into the break room, my head held high. Song Ya immediately fell silent, her face turning pale. But Li Ying, full of disdain, mocked, "Oh, I wonder how shameless someone has to be to destroy another's relationship. I feel sick just being in the same company as that person." Song Ya kept nudging her, trying to stop her, but Li Ying wouldn't shut up. "Why aren't you saying anything? Feeling guilty?" I calmly asked her, "Why should I feel guilty? You stole someone's boyfriend and still have the nerve to ask why." I ignored her and turned to Song Ya. "Song Ya, tell everyone the truth. Did I steal your boyfriend?"